Hey everybody, it's Clint Powell. Hey, this is one of those episodes where I do not send it to my engineer Parker, the guy that works his magic on all the editing and making it sound super clean and professional. Get something out of my brain and I just put it out there. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about salespeople, sales folks, whether you're a full commission, part commission, salary, whatever it is. There's something unique about salespeople, and a lot of times, especially if you're a business owner, we don't look at ourselves as salespeople or sales managers because we sell widgets, right? And we make a widget that fits a need, and there you go. Along that process, though, of owning a business is you're a salesperson. You're selling yourself when you're talking to vendors and partners and future employees and the bank and now customers. And so I wanted to talk a little bit, though, about a question that somebody asked me. They've asked me a few times over my career because I'm getting older, right? We're all getting older, I guess. That's kind of dumb. But I'm close to 52. And they ask, what do you do? What industry are you in sometimes, especially at these networking groups? And I've always said I'm either in sales or I'm a business owner. All these things are true, right? They make up what I do. But the older I've gotten and the more I look back on what I've done and start really asking myself the question that I hope my kids who are way younger than me, I hope they ask this question of themselves. They ask this question of themselves and take it more seriously than I ever did. What do I do, but what do I enjoy? What am I good at? And what do I not like to do? And there's some things that we are on our list that we don't like to do that we just have to do, right? There's some essentials, some things we can't just delegate. And then there's some things that we get stuck doing that not only are we not good at, we don't enjoy. And then we have to learn to let some stuff just go. Now, that's not the gist of this. I said all of that to kind of set it up back to the question. What industry are you in? What do you do? Well, as a salesperson, I've done sales training in the past. I've spoken to sales groups. I've done over 250 seminars. And so I think I have a good perspective, a good frame of reference. I've been a sales manager and I have been managed. Business owner, employee, unemployed, fired, right? He has to go through stuff. So I thought about it. And if you were to say, what do you do as a salesperson? And it goes across most industries. And I use the word most because as soon as people hear this, they're going to start finding ways. That's the world we live in, right? They start finding crevices in the concrete so they can pry it. Not right. I can't believe he or she said that. But one of the things that I do is I ask people to talk. Not only do I ask people to talk on radio shows and podcasts and in the sales process, but I specifically either want them to tell me bits and pieces about themselves so I can put the story together. More importantly, I would love for them to tell me their story, especially as it relates to whatever we're talking about. I want to hear their story. I want them to tell me once upon a time. Now, I don't want to hear about it from birth, but I love to hear a story. And if you were to ask for a living, I would tell you that a main part of what I do for a living is I ask people to tell me their stories. Because inside that story, I'm going to find out how they got to where they are. Hopefully, I will listen well enough to figure out strengths and weaknesses and how they value relationships, especially if I ask the right questions inside their story as they're relating it to me. And if I know when to be quiet and listen. Their story is vital. It's going to tell me where their pain points are. It's going to tell me how I can how I can be part of their story. How maybe, if I'm lucky enough, I get to rewrite the story moving forward just a little bit, right? So I ask them to tell me. But the other thing I do, the other part of what I do, and I think salespeople do, is we ask other people to listen to our story. Not only the story of how we got to where we're at, but the story where I get to include their part of the story. How I've gotten to where I'm at, my frame of reference, my experiences, my successes, my failures, my product, my service, and its history, and our goals and our core priorities. How can they get written into the next chapter of your story. So, of course, I want to hear your story. I ask you to listen to my story, and hopefully this happens in an organic, natural way. But what does that really mean as a salesperson? It means you and I deal in, fill in the blank, stories. We deal in stories. It's what we navigate every day. Now, here's the crazy part. You don't have to really understand this concept to be super successful in stories. I mean, in sales. You just don't. There's people out there that are they're doing it. Bam, bam. I've been young before and full speed ahead. What I didn't realize, though, is a lot of what I'm saying now, I was doing then without being of it. I wish I was more aware of it then because I could have been more intentional with it. Intentional with how I deal in stories. I should have been a better listener. I was engaging. I had energy. I had, the spark in my eye. I was asking the right questions. But in the back of my brain, I didn't put it all together. I wasn't intentional with, am I asking these right questions? Is this a good fit for a client? That's why a lot of times we take clients that aren't good fits. I didn't really listen to their story. I didn't really sit back and before I told them my story and go, does this somehow get written into each other? So we deal in stories. And that's why it's very, very important that you get good at listening to stories, asking for the stories, be curious about the stories, acknowledging, the peaks and the valleys in a story, the glimpses in a story, right? How they handle things in their story, how they talk to you in their story, their body language. Listening to the stories are super important because there'll be tons of foreshadowing. There's a story arc. All these things that go into why you love a movie and a book, you'll either be attracted to it or you won't. And then you get to step back and go, okay, now how can I take my experiences, all of these different chapters I've written, is the story that I'm creating, is that a good fit for their story? And I know this sounds big picture, and a lot of people were going to say, where's the details? There's a ton of details on how you track your numbers, and are you tracking the ones important to you? There's tons of details on systems and processes, and I help people with that all the time. But I am telling you, when someone asks you what you do, in your brain, you better understand I deal in stories. It's what I do for a living. And it's different hard work, but it's hard work. I've got to understand how to help you craft your story. I got to make sure I'm drawing the right characters from you. I'm asking the questions at the right time in the story. And I got to be careful how I craft my story. Salespeople, we get very myopic about our story. We tell our story from how it makes us happy. I want to share the things with you that I like to hear myself say, and that may fit sometimes. But as a salesperson, I better get really good at listening to your story, being inquisitive about your story, but I also be very deliberate, intentional with how I craft my story for you. And a lot of times, we as salespeople don't invest the time in our sales to sit down and go, okay, what stories am I attracted to? What stories have I had the best success being written into? And what is my real story? If I were to say once upon a time, and then I would try to fill in how I got to where I'm at, where is the story inside the story that helps my clients, my future clients? Why should people be attracted to my story? And there's so many elements in that. There's ego, there's how you handle success, there's how you handle failure, there's the details, their strengths and weaknesses. All of these things go into crafting your story. What I have found a lot of times, the super successful salespeople either are doing it because they've got this natural chemistry, but at some point in time, you're going to experience burnout. You're going to experience a market downshift. And if you haven't spent time on understanding that your success is not by accident, or if you can replicate it out and finding the right stories when the harvest is not plentiful. When the drought sets in, how you go out and find business is super, super important. But you can't do that if you don't know what you deal in. And I'm telling you, as a salesperson, we deal in stories. So you better be good at stories. So you better be good at listening. You better be good at recognizing a good story that fits you. And you better be really good at crafting your own story. There you go. I just had to get that out of my brain. We're storytellers. We're listeners.